I am so inspired by people who are inspired to inspire others. And sometimes it's inspire, sometimes it's educate, sometimes it's grow, sometimes it's transform or share their story so that somebody else can be impacted. And I have seen time and time again that writing is such a powerful way to do that.
Hey, it's Renee. Welcome to the Into the Wild Show, a podcast designed to encourage women to take their back of the napkin idea, launch it, and grow a wildly successful business. I founded We Wild Women, an entrepreneur training company, to help women like you, moms and go-getters, start the business of their dreams the right way. Not too long ago, I launched my $1 million agency when I was 8 months pregnant with my first son and welcomed my second son only 11 months later. So I know how to grow businesses and babies. Join me as I teach you the guiding principles and how to start and grow your business while overcoming the voice in your head screaming, "It's not possible." These raw and funny episodes will make you feel like you're right here with me, sipping on some Pinot and leaving more confident saying, "Yes, I can." Every episode leaves you with some action items and a real kick in the ass to get started. Here on Into the Wild, you'll hear from other trailblazing entrepreneurs and experts because I know that the best advice is from someone who's successfully done it before. So put your headphones on, grab a cup of coffee, and tune in because Into the Wild is about to begin.
Subscribe to my mom's podcast.
Hey, you wild women! My next guest is a best-selling author, creative consultant, and speaker, as well as the founder of Nonfiction Book School. She served as a longtime ghostwriter for a Nobel Prize winner in medicine and an executive editor at Sam's Club's Healthy Living Made Simple, a publication that reached over 11 million readers. Her latest co-authored book is called Growing Influence. Her TEDx talk, How to Raise Brave Kids, has been viewed tens of thousands of times around the world. She now lives in Portugal with her husband and 2 children. So please welcome the incredible Stacy Ennis.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this conversation.
Me too. So you are living on the other side of the world, and we're going to get into this, but right now you're currently located in Portugal.
Yeah, southern Portugal. That's right.
What's the weather like there this time of year?
It's amazing pretty much all year. We have, in the winter, we get some rain, but, we almost all year, there's a period that you can wear shorts during the day. So it's really nice. And right now it's just sunny all day.
So I heard a lot about Portugal and everyone always wants to go there, especially my parents. It wasn't on my list, but I feel like it's been kind of coming back to me so many times now to go.
Yeah, it's popular right now. I've noticed that too. It's gotten a lot of attention lately.
Is there a lot of expats there?
Yeah, there are. There's a lot more British expats than there are Americans, but the American population's definitely grown a lot since we moved here. We've been here almost 3 years. So even just in the last year, there's been a lot more Americans moving here.
Huh. I wonder if the pandemic has anything to do with that.
I think so.
Or some terrible gun laws and all the
politics, COVID. There's a lot to it.
All politics. Anyway, but you escaped before, so congratulations. All right, so let's jump into some quick questions. I'd love to know, where are you from?
I'm from Idaho in the U.S.
Great.
Yes.
The potato state.
Yes, and the blue field. I always like to point out we also have a blue football field that we're known for.
Really?
Other than potatoes. Yes, but maybe that's not on your radar. But even
Idaho actually
even in Thailand, somebody mentioned that to me. Oh, the blue football field. Yes, that's us.
So what, is it like NFL or?
No, it's we have a college, my alma mater, Boise State University. We're the only ones in college football that have like a not green field. So we have a blue football field. So it's like one of the 2 things we're known for.
I'm envisioning this right now. Now, Idaho kind of comes up and touches Canada, right?
Yes, yeah.
Almost like it has its arm raised up and they're like, I'm just feeling you, sister. You're right above me.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So interesting. But anyway, okay. What is your favorite quote?
My favorite quote. Well, I have on a sticky note on my monitor, my desk, when in doubt, create. And that has been such a great anchor. That just came to me one day. I was just sitting there and I was feeling down and stressed. And that anchor for me, that like when I'm in doubt to just create, has been just such a powerful reframe when I'm, feeling writer's block or stressed or tired or, wanting to be at the beach instead of at my desk. That creation and sitting down and creating is such a great reframe for me.
I love creating. What is one of the best pieces of business advice you ever received?
I have a dear friend. For the early part of my career, she was just such a great mentor. She continues to be a mentor, but we're more friends now. I was in transition from my undergrad to either taking a job in the Dominican Republic or going to graduate school. And I had a full funding offer for graduate school. My dad really wanted me to take that. And we went on a walk in Idaho, we have this green belt that stretches across the city of Boise, where I'm from. So lots of trees and it's next to the river. And I was just, every stage of your life, like whatever decision, it just feels like the biggest decision ever. And it was just so stressful making this choice. And she was really quiet. She listened to me. And then there was kind of a pause in our conversation. And she said, Stacy, I had a piece of advice from my mentor one time. And she said, you make a choice and then you make another one. Mm-hmm. And for my whole entrepreneurial journey, that was over probably 14 years ago. It has been such a great anchor because it reminds me that, whatever the choice is before me, the world does not end at that decision. I always have an opportunity to make a different decision after that if it's not the right path for me.
It's true, huh? When we make these decisions, we think this is the final decision, right? So say you did decide to go, I don't know, did you do grad school?
I did, but I lived in a couple countries first. So I ended up going to grad school 2 years later, and I did get full funding after that. So my dad was happy.
But it's so interesting when we make these decisions, for the most part, on a day-to-day basis, they're not like final. It's not like if you do this and you can't do anything else for the rest of your life. We put so much stress on these decisions. Like, do I fly into this city a day before the event or the day of the event? It's like, oh, why am I losing sleep over this? Like, who cares? Make the decision. Okay, so what is one of your biggest business mistakes?
Well, let's see. I think it was probably around 2000, it must have been 2016. Yeah, it was about 2016. I wanted to put together this retreat for people in like professional transition. So my idea was these are people that want to leave their jobs and transition into entrepreneurship or whatever their next big thing is. And I did so much work to launch this thing. I put down a huge investment for me at the time at a hotel. I traveled around the country actually scouting different locations. I brought a team together. And then I totally failed at launching it. I mean, literally nobody signed up. And I lost a lot of money, not only with the travel and scouting and stuff, but also with this big deposit I'd put down at a hotel. But it was such an important lesson for me because up until that point, for whatever reason, I had this view that other people had to give me opportunities. Like a client had to give me an opportunity to travel. Like they had to give me a project that required me to travel. Or, if I wanted to, that's actually a great example. I had this particular client that I was working on something and they wanted me to travel somewhere, then I would travel. But I never really was creating my own opportunities. I was letting other people give them to me. And even though I failed at that, I was creating my own thing and my own opportunity. And it was such actually like great confidence builder, strangely enough, even though I totally failed and lost a bunch of money, just because I did it myself. And I realized like, oh, I could actually keep doing this and I'm not going to fail every time, but I can create my own opportunities. So it was really great, actually. I'm really glad I failed at that.
Can I ask how much you lost, or is that a secret?
Honestly, I don't remember. At the time, I want to say it was like somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000. But at the time, that was a fortune to me. My business was not where it is today. And yeah, it was a big deal for me and my family. And I learned a lot from that. But I'm also really glad that, like I said, I'm really glad that I did that and I failed.
Yeah, I don't know a single successful entrepreneur that hasn't made a huge financial mistake at some point. Even when they're experienced, it still happens.
Right.
And it's okay. Usually the more successful you are, the more expensive your mistakes, right? So that could have been a $150,000 mistake had you done it today, maybe. Who knows?
Yes. I mean, I've definitely made more costly mistakes since then for sure, but they didn't hit me as hard as that did because, again, of where my business was at the time. And it was kind of my first foray into trying and failing something of that scale. So always great lessons learned.
Yeah, I know it is. Okay, last quick question. What is a book that you could recommend today?
Well, I've been reading a lot of fiction lately, even though I work in the nonfiction space. So I'm always also reading like 1,000 nonfiction books at one time. I did recently read Rachel Rogers' We Should All Be Millionaires and really enjoyed that book. I thought it was uplifting for women that, are looking to build wealth and build their businesses. So that one, that's good. I would definitely recommend that one.
All right. I will put that in the show notes. You're not the first person to recommend that book as of late. All right. So let us know, what is the name of your company and what inspired you to start it?
Yeah, well, my company name's technically Creatively LLC, but I don't ever go by that. I just go with my name, Stacy Ennis, and website stacyennis.com. And what inspired me to start my business, I started out, my original business was called Freelance Expat, and I started it when we were living in the Dominican Republic. And my vision was to be a travel writer / help all these tourist companies use English better, essentially. I saw their menus and their marketing and their signs, and they were all a mess, right? Which, as you would expect in the Caribbean. And then again, when we moved to Vietnam after that, same thing. I was still trying to build that. I learned pretty quickly, though, that that's not a great path to build a strong business. There's not a lot of money in travel writing or going around and trying to correct people's menus at tourist places. But it was a good first kind of foray into that. And fast forward today, I get to work with business leaders who are looking to scale their impact, and I help them do that through writing. So I am so inspired by people who are inspired to inspire others. And sometimes it's inspire, sometimes it's educate, sometimes it's grow, sometimes it's transform or share their story so that somebody else can be impacted. And I have seen time and time again that writing is such a powerful way to do that.
And so these entrepreneurs or authors write their own books? Is it are they business books? What's the content typically?
Yeah, I specialize in business and leadership and also books that have a social good message. So I've worked with a number of people that have some kind of, especially they're from a specific cultural background and they have really unique views on specific things. So lots of different ones in that general sphere, nonprofit leaders, CEOs, entrepreneurs, consultants, coaches, aspiring speakers or speakers who are looking to level up. And typically, we're working on a book, the way that I see the work that I do, because you can write a book that's like a business card, right? Or you can write a book that has a real shelf life and has a real impact on people. And there is a difference. Not that the latter can't be a business card. I mean, it can if it could serve that purpose. But when I work with people, they see that book and the journey of writing a book as a catalyst for their big vision. It's part of their journey, and they understand that the journey of authorhood is transformational. So I coach people, to answer your question. Yeah, they write their books. I coach them through the process. And then we also have a team that ghostwrites books. So this would be, for example, a CEO or really anybody who maybe they don't have the time to write, but they're really great verbalizers. They can talk out their ideas and share their stories verbally. Maybe they don't have any interest in developing the skill of writing because it is its own skill set. Or maybe they just want a partner. They want somebody to journey with and to really help them shape the words. So we do both. And I also have a program that walks people step by step through the process of writing a meaningful nonfiction book, a really powerful book.
Yeah, I wrote one called Get Covered, How to Craft, Pitch, and Tell Your Startup Story to Get More Customers. And that all started because at the time we had a really great blog. This was back in 2014. And there was a decent amount of traffic for what we were, a PR agency that worked with funded technology startups. So we had some brilliant people on the team from the affiliate space, SEO space, marketing, PR, and each person on our team wanted to write a blog post. And so we did it all internally. Everyone wrote their content. We taught them how to write a blog post. And traffic was insane. And we partnered with some incredible people in the industry. And I was like, you know what? Let's just put a book together. We'll just pull all of our great top 12 blog posts and we'll find a way to bridge the content, which is the stupidest way to write a book. Don't ever do that ever. And I know that, Stacy, we talked about this before and you're like, no, because there has to be a storyline throughout the book in order for it to make sense, or else it's a textbook and you do not want to write a textbook. So it took me the better part, and my co-author, Crystal, like 2 years to write this thing because we had to start over and start over and start over. And finally I was like, this doesn't make any sense. But it's out there. And now I'm a published author and it feels great. Self-published, Amazon self-publishing platform, which 4 or 5 years ago was great. Kind of complicated, but figured it out. It's out there. But we did it all ourselves. And I'm friends with a lot of people that have had ghostwriters that have kind of done some of the writing and some of the non-writing. And it's interesting. But for me, it's like I wrote it and published it when I was coming to the end of my days in running the PR agency. So the question was like, why am I doing this now? It doesn't make any sense because I'm not going to be doing this type of work. But I started it again anyway. And it ended up being more of this, like, for me, it was like this authority thing that I needed to like prove that, because like in the book was all our success stories and how we got clients on the Steve Harvey show, how the PR that we garnered them earned them like $450,000 in a day, like all this stuff, right? And now it's like kind of like my CV of success.
Yeah.
That actually gives away really good PR advice.
Yeah. I think I love that. Okay, let me back up a little. First of all, I love your PSA that blog to book does not work very well a lot of the time, especially when you don't plan to do that, right? Like when you try to pull together a lot of content. I think people think that's going to save time, but then they get into it and they're like ripping their hair out because it's so painful to try to get everything organized. You can use existing content, but you need to plan the book first and then pull in the content that fits, right? So it's the book first and then pulling in, which you did the opposite, right? And it's a painful lesson that you probably won't repeat because it's a lot. But to your point, I think because I focus on writing, I don't focus on publishing, although I educate people on that. There's that bringing forth of this book that is such a great, like it holds the success that you've had and it also introduces people to you and your success. But also I think, especially as women, we're not great at reflecting on our own success and pulling that together into a story that we can share. So I imagine maybe for you, there was also that component of it, of pulling all this together and like journeying back through your success and then putting it into a format that other people can engage with. That in itself is its own powerful journey.
And it's interesting because a lot of people, especially listeners, they don't think they have a story within them. And everybody does. Right? There's just a lot of things we don't recall. There's a lot of like dots that we haven't yet connected, but there's a story in all of us. And that book was just full of like strategic and tactical advice. There's hardly anything personal in there at all. But it was an interesting experience. And I encourage everyone to, start the process. You don't have to publish a book, but they do want to, they can come and work with you to go through the process. So really quickly, where can they go online if they are curious about your offer?
Yeah, I'm at stacyennis.com and I'm also on pretty much any major social media platform and always try to publish valuable content there too. So either my website or you can find me on social media, either of those places.
Okay, good. I want to skip to some good stuff now because you're from Idaho, but you now live in Portugal, which you've lived in Vietnam and you lived in Dominican. So you've been all over the place.
And
you
Thailand
have a family.
too.
And of course, Thailand. Yeah. So this is all like creating this lifestyle. And lifestyle design has been this kind of buzzword now for, 10 years. And maybe the pandemic has really taught us about what remote work really means. There's probably a lot of people doing this, but why is being location independent so important to you? And how have you developed this? How have you designed this lifestyle for you and your family?
Well, we talked about I'm born and raised in Idaho, which is an amazing place. I'm from Boise, the capital city, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful upbringing. But Boise, Idaho in general is very homogenous. And I would say American culture in general has kind of a path that you follow, that like there are boxes that you tick along the way that are signaling success, that you've like followed the correct path and you've done the thing that you're supposed to do. And something about that just never really settled well with me. I'd never wanted, like I was always kind of the kid that like did the thing the adult told them not to, right? And I think I carried that, into adulthood. when I graduated my undergrad, my husband and I took teaching jobs in the Dominican Republic, and then we moved to Vietnam, and then I went to grad school, so we moved to Ohio, and then I got pregnant in grad school right before my second year, and took an editorial job at the Sam's Club magazine, and found out I was pregnant actually after we decided that. And so we had this taste of living abroad. Now, it's very different when you don't have kids. I mean, it's such a different experience. But I remember before my daughter was born, she was born in 2013, so it must have been winter of 2012. My husband and I were walking, just on a walk, just early evening, and it was cold. I remember that, and I was getting that kind of pregnant waddle starting. I was getting to that stage. And we were talking about the life that we wanted for our family. And as much as we love Boise, we knew that we didn't want our whole entire life to be there. And we also knew that to us, it's so important to raise global citizens, to raise children that feel at home in the world. And we didn't feel like we could give them that entirely, just raising them in Boise. Again, nothing wrong with that, but that just didn't feel right to us. And so we decided that we're like, okay, we're going to move to Thailand. That's our plan. Well, it took us, I think, 8 years to make that happen. I mean, we had that conversation, and about 8 years later, we finally did that. And, it was, I guess it wasn't quite 8 years, because we ended up going in 2018. So it was close to 6 years. So we were back in the US for 8 years, but it was 6 years after that conversation. And I think we talked about that almost every day for those 6 years. And it was just this thing that we dreamed about and we anchored to, and we knew we weren't quite ready because we had our son, and life is tough when you have really young children. And then we finally got to a place where we were like, okay, maybe we could actually do this. And we moved to Thailand. I think for us, when I started my business back in 2009, and as I grew it with this vision, we defined that in 2012 and continued to grow it. That was always the vision, was I want to be able to choose. I don't want to be beholden to somebody else's idea of where I should be, what I should be doing, when I should be doing it. And we wanted that freedom to just decide for ourselves and to create our own life the way that we wanted to create it. That has also included my husband staying home with our children. He started staying home when our daughter was 5 months old, and just kind of making a lot of decisions that a lot of people in our, I think, social circle were kind of scratching their head what are y'all doing over there? It's a little weird. But for us, we're I don't really care whether you approve of this. This is what we want, and we're going to keep that vision strong. I think that vision is so important, and being okay with the timeline not being exactly what you think it's going to be too.
No, I know we used to live in San Francisco, and my husband, I guess he was my fiance at the time, wanted eventually to get married and have kids, but we didn't think that it would happen so soon. So I got pregnant with Max, and to have a baby in the US with very little to no medical coverage is very expensive. So let's just hightail it back to Canada, where it's pretty much free. And we were only supposed to be there for 6 months, and we stayed almost 10 years.
Wow.
And just like you said, you don't know what it's like until you have children. And for us, it was hard to leave because we had the support. We had a great community, great healthcare, decent education. And then finally one day in the pandemic, for us, it just clicked. We're like, why are we here? We love our family and friends. And that is absolutely the hardest thing that we love. We wish they could bring them with us, but we're like, this is not serving our lifestyle. We know what we want. And so now we moved to the mountains in British Columbia, and honestly haven't been happier as a family. Even my kids, they're thriving here. And it's I felt like I've just been stifling their growth by staying in a community that wasn't for us. And I'm sure you went through this too, but societal pressures and pressures from family, how dare you pick up your family and move? They have everything they need. And I'm so do all the kids in British Columbia. They also have everything they need. And, finally it was screw what everyone else thinks. I actually don't care. I'm doing this for us. And I'm so thankful. And all those friends and family, guess how many times we see them now? Way the heck more than we did living in the same city. They're
Yeah,
across
because
the
you're so
country.
intentional, right, about your
Yes.
time when you are in the same place or they come visit. I mean, my best friend is coming pretty soon here for a couple of weeks, and I visited her in Scotland. And, like we do get that time together. It's just that you have to be really intentional about it.
Exactly. And then when they do come and visit, is you put that time aside. It's not like you're just popping in for a quick hello after work for an hour. It's like they're here full time for a week and you're hanging out with them, breakfast, lunch, dinner, doing everything. And it's like hyper focused time. So all this to say is I get this lifestyle design and, being location independent is so important for us, for you, because you get to craft the lifestyle that you want. So on that note, was there anybody you had to that you upset in this transition to you moving outside of the US?
Oh, yeah. I mean, of course, my parents were not happy when we left, and I think for them, my sister moved away. She lives in another state as well. And so I think that is really hard. It is really hard. I think anybody who's considering this needs to be real about the fact that you're leaving people that you love. And sometimes you have hard things that happen and you don't have that family around, you don't have that support system, and that can be really hard. But if you have, a strong vision and you know what you want for your family. I mean, I got goosebumps when you were saying how your children are thriving. For us, we moved from the mountains to the beach, and we have the beach 1.5 miles from our house, and it's so soul nourishing and so just we go just on a casual Sunday, and my husband and I will be sitting there and we're like, we gotta do this. This is our life. Can you believe this? And I feel like we are also, as we are enriching ourselves and we feel joyful and anchored and content with where we are, that also impacts our children as well, because they, you're a little ecosystem as a family and you all impact each other. So, there are those, it is hard to be away from people, especially people that don't want you to leave, like my parents, for example. But to your point, you also, when you do get time together, it is so concentrated and so connected and really meaningful. And you do get those late night chats over tea after the kids go to bed and things that you would never do at home because you're going to see each other the next week. So we're just going to grab lunch real quick. It's just different.
It is different. And I know there's some people that can't do this because they have a physical location and there's reasons why they can't. And some people don't want to, and that's fine. But this message really is for the people that have the chance to do this. And let me say, it's not easy, as you know, the paperwork to move to, especially for a new country, to pack up a house. It's a lot of hard work, and it's probably a year of confusion. But once you land and you get settled, it's why did we take so long to do this? I look out on mountains on the other side of my house. We live on the side of a mountain that has some of the best downhill mountain biking in the area. And the lake's right there. The school that my youngest goes to is an outdoor school. He's literally outside all day and he thrives. And it's just if I would have known this is what it looked like, the decision would have been made easier. But there was no one that was really modeling this for me. I had no one in my network that was doing this because most of my friends, they live where they grew up. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. That's their decision. But who knows? There's probably an inkling inside of them. Oh, let's go explore, right? And you can run a thriving business and have a thriving family living where you want to live, doing what you want to do.
Yeah. I was just going to add to that, Renee, because to your point, you don't necessarily have to move to be location independent, right? It's really about maintaining choice in your ability to make another decision down the road. And also for us, being location independent has allowed us, when we moved to Thailand, it was not the right decision for us. We actually had so many hardships there, a lot of hospitalizations for my children, just a lot of things that were really, really hard. And we ended up leaving and then coming to Portugal. And for us, just getting to choose that. One day my husband and I were sitting on the couch and we both had the same thought, and we looked at each other and we're like, we don't have to do this. We can make a different choice. And that day we decided we're not doing this anymore. We're going to do something different. That's what location independence is about. It's not necessarily about moving to a new country or a new place. It's having freedom that if you want to change your mind down the road or move, that you can do it without permission and with that flexibility.
True. And also working from wherever, the coffee shop
Yes.
up the street, or
Exactly.
working from 6 a.m. till noon every day. Yeah, I get it. And for me, it's like the choice to be an entrepreneur in the industry that I am is because of the freedom. Like spending time this morning with my son to play Monopoly, going to the scooter park after this call, because I don't have to be here and we can go and do these things. So what would be your advice to a woman who is thinking about making this leap?
I would start with vision, really sitting down. And for me, what I did, we had that initial conversation. We had talked loosely about this dream pretty much daily. But when I got really serious about it, I set aside about an hour and a half, and I just journaled about the life that I wanted and what I wanted to create for my family and how I envisioned us and what I wanted for my children, what I wanted for my marriage, what I wanted for my business, like that ideal. Like, what was that ideal? If I could do anything, like wave a magic wand, what would that look like? And then I've done that every year since. And that to me has been such a powerful, not only the activity, but then also it's so cool to go back a year later or even 5 years later and review what I wrote and say, oh my gosh, I'm 80% there or 50% there even, or even 30% there is progress, right? And to have that, it's like a metric that you can look at and say, I have actually worked toward my dream. So really that vision piece is so important. I think if you have that vision already and maybe where you want to go, or you want to go somewhere, you want to move, you want to explore. The next step is just setting a date and then working backwards from that. And we actually had, when we moved to Thailand, we had my parents over. So cheesy upon reflection, but we put a picture of Thailand like on our television screen, and we're like, Mom and Dad, we're moving to Thailand, or just we announced it. It was like an announcement event with them. And actually saying that, and we picked a month that we were moving and gave it a real practical component, the dream became more practical. That was really powerful. Now we ended up leaving a few months later than that. We picked a date a year out, and that was doable. And then I worked backwards. Marie Kondo'd my house, it was that process of I knew what to plan for and I could plan for it. And we had a date, and that made it real. And then I knew what to research next. And then also I would say, again, a really practical step for anyone who's a little further along. There are companies that help you with this, so hire them. I mean, we hired an attorney to help with our move, our residency. And we've hired, there are relocation companies that will actually do everything for you. We didn't do that in Thailand, and it was a nightmare. We did that in Portugal, and it was relatively smooth sailing. So highly recommend that too. Get help, get support. I hired somebody locally in both places to help us with school research, neighborhood research. So those types of things that you can get help from other people, hire it if you can afford it. Which I would add that if you're striving for location independence, you should have some of that savings and financial cushion, right? So probably that's affordable for you. But that was a huge, huge benefit for us when we went to actually make the move.
I like the setting the date thing. It doesn't compare, but even my podcast, for instance, I mean, I've been doing this for over 2 years now, and I kept talking about it for 2 years prior. And finally, one day my husband turned to me. He's like, when are you doing this? What's the date? And I'm like, oh, as soon as he said the date, my mind went to, oh crap, I actually need to make this happen now. And I was looked at the calendar and I just threw a date, April 27th. And he goes, okay, that's when you're doing this. Go on now and publicly declare that you're doing this. So went on to Instagram and I was like, I'm launching a podcast. And I held myself to it. But if it wasn't for the date, I wouldn't have done it. And another thing happened actually this morning when I said, I am going to be training really hard for the next 12 months to compete at my first CrossFit competition. My husband's like, good for you, because you've been talking about this for a long time too. He goes, what's the competition? And I'm like, one in 12 months. I don't know. And he goes, well, which one is it? I'm like, well, I was thinking CanWest Games, it's next July. And he goes, can you sign up for it? I go, no, because it hasn't happened yet for this year. So registration will open after. And he's like, well, do you have a team? And I was like, oh my God, he's making me do this again. So being said, it'll be July of next year. But the date thing is so important. If it means you're going to make your business fully remote, if it means you're moving, whatever it is in your life, set the date that's a little bit uncomfortable, but realistic, and then share it with people.
Yes.
Because for me, it's like the vision, the date, sharing, and that helped make everything happen.
Yes, I agree. I think that's so true with so many things, right? Like writing a book, doing a CrossFit competition, like you're setting a year out. And I feel like a year it's like long enough that you have time to organize, but it's not so far that it doesn't feel real. And for us, that was the right time frame. And for you in that situation. So if somebody's looking for a time frame, I would say anywhere from 6 to 12 months out, but probably more like the 9 to 12 months is a good range if you're like ready. You're like, I'm going to do this. And I would also keep in mind if you're moving internationally that most countries you have to start about 6 months early with your residency process. It's just part of, like, you can't just move places. Americans listening, you cannot do whatever you want in the world. You actually have to go through processes to be allowed to do things. So,
oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Oh, we have a friend of ours who lives in California whose wife's passport expired years ago. And he's like, yeah, we're just going to pop up. And we're like, oh, cool, like come visit. And he's like, do we need a passport? I'm like, I don't understand what message is happening in America, but you don't own the world. And yes, you need a passport to enter into another country. Just a suggestion. But yes, the paperwork does take some time. We've been through it as a family, working on our paperwork to actually move to California prior to the pandemic. And it was a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a little hiccup. So if anybody knows my husband's story, he shares this publicly, but he had a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a criminal, what's not
judgment?
Well, like when he was a child, he broke the law and did some really crazy things involving stealing a car and having a gun and all that stuff. And so he thought this was on his record. Turns out when you're a juvenile, that stuff becomes, and these are not the right legal terms, but it's automatically deleted over time. But because he had already publicly shared his story, the government goes off the stories that they're sharing before looking at the research. And it turns out he doesn't actually have a criminal record anymore. It's been deleted. That's not the word. But anyways, so we had to go through all of these loopholes and figure out how to make, and that took an extra 2 or 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm not saying like people have criminal records, you probably should like check into that, but there's going to be something, right? And the time it does take, well, you have to find the right schools for your kids, the right neighborhoods if you are moving internationally or to another city or even across town. There's stuff you have to figure out. But if you give yourself a year, I think it's close enough that it can feel painful, but it's long enough out that you can figure stuff out if you start today.
Yes.
That also being said about your business. If you are a brick and mortar or you have a location dependent business, start figuring out how you can make that an independent business. But it's definitely a very freeing lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. To your point too, I think a lot of people, even if they don't have like a physical location, they've built their business very locally. And so that mindset can be limiting, right? Like, oh, all of my clients are local. All of my work is here. My professional network is here. And so if you have an idea that you want to go abroad someday or move even to a different state, that's something you can start working on now, growing from a local to a global brand and really beginning to put out content that's not just locally focused, seek out clients that aren't just local, beginning to grow more of a broader presence.
Exactly. Okay, I have one last question for you. When I ask you what it means to be a wild woman, what is that to you?
Ooh, I think it means having courage to try and fail at things. And I think that includes making choices that aren't necessarily along the status quo, and then making different choices. Just to loop it back to our earlier conversation, that idea is so freeing, and it also lets you be wild, right? Because if you go in a direction that's not the right choice, like moving to Thailand, for example, you can choose something else and you can find something that does align.
Love it. Okay, so remind us again where we can go to find you online.
Yeah, you can find me at stacyennis.com. I'm at Stacy Ennis on Instagram, and I'm on LinkedIn. Find me just look for Stacy Ennis. And anybody who listens to this and wants to connect, just if you DM me, just let me know that you heard me on this podcast. I would love to support you as you're writing your book or even considering a location-independent business and lifestyle.
Woohoo! And if you're in Portugal, you can go find Stacy.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. This was a great conversation.
So there you have it. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Into the Wild. To make this girl happy and to help reach other women who are dreaming of starting their business, please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes and everywhere you listen in. Also, if you want to find me in the wild, check me out on Instagram at Renee_Warren. That's RENEE_WARREN. And leaving you with one of my favorite tips of all time: the best advice you could ever receive is from someone who has successfully done it before you. Until next time, ladies, peace out.